Hey everyone, we are so excited to the reaction in the community for the pod. I need to take a moment of your time to tell you to please subscribe to the podcast on Apple Podcasts or hit the follow button on Spotify. We are in the humble beginning stage of our show and establishing a listener base is of paramount importance and will help us determine the frequency of future episodes. Thanks and enjoy the show. Hello and welcome to the Neuse Little Podcast, an audio program discussing the almost 50-year history of Neuse Little Theater and the backstage antics and stories that come along with running community theater in a small town. I'm your host, Matt Gore, and we are coming to you from NLT's stage and base of operations, the little log cabin located on the banks of the Neuse River in Smithfield, North Carolina. We lovingly refer to it as the Hut. Our 46th season, along with virtually every other community theater season in our state, has been postponed due to the COVID-19 pandemic, and in the meantime, we thought we would provide you with some additional content. So, here with me now is a gentleman I've known for quite some time. I met him in 2008 in the first show I ever did with Neuse Little Theater. He is a veteran actor here, and I also knew him before that because he was actually my science teacher in high school. He is vice president at NLT, and one of our favorite members here, Mr. Sammy Smith. How are you doing, sir?
I'm doing well, Matt. Thank you. I was also Mita's science teacher, too.
Yeah, were you?
Yep.
Yes, he was.
That voice you hear is our third mic. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, we finally have a third mic for Mita. I know we've had her on in the past, but sometimes it's been hard to hear, so we've rectified that and added a third mic. So say hello, Mita.
Hello, Mita.
All right. So, Sammy, I wanted to bring you here today because we're talking about the history of NLT, and we've gotten a pretty firm base when it comes to the history and actually what happened. So, we wanted to go ahead and move along with that, and your name stuck out to me because, I don't know, whenever I think NLT, you're always like one of the first four people that pops in my head because I know you going back so far. What year did you start at NLT, sir?
1997.
Okay. So what was your first show?
Little Shop of Horrors.
So Little Shop of Horrors. Now, we discussed that briefly on the last podcast, but we didn't go in depth about it. We'll go in depth about it now. Who directed that one?
It was Lawrence, lady from Raleigh.
Was it Allison Lawrence?
Allison Lawrence, yes.
Yeah. That's why we added the third mic, everybody. That's why we added the third mic right there. Now, I've worked with Tony many times as a actor, and he is a director, but I've never worked with him as an actor on stage before, except for briefly, and we'll get into that briefly on that Shakespeare thing we did, the 24-hour Shakespeare Playfest. I did actually work with him as an actor, and you were in that as well, weren't you?
Yes.
Yeah. What is it like working with Tony Pender as an actor?
It's very interesting to watch someone with that kind of talent work, and he was very, very supportive of me being a first timer on stage, very encouraging, and was one heck of a role model to follow.
Right. Now, what part did you play in that, sir?
I was actually had three parts. I was one of the street bums. And then I was Mr. Bernstein, the man from NBC, trying to get Seymour to have a television show. And I was a radio interviewer and had to interview Seymour, Tony, in the show.
Now, that first time out, and you have like three roles. Was that something that was challenging to you, or was it something that came naturally?
I didn't look at it as a big challenge. Really didn't. The Bernstein character had a little ditty to sing as a part with several other people that would come on and talk to Seymour. So I got a chance to sing for the first time I was on stage, and it was quite an experience.
Well, Sammy, whenever I think about you as an actor, you're one of the actors that can do this, and Nancy is also one of these actors that comes to mind that can do this very well. You make it look so easy up on stage. You make it look like the easiest thing, and I know it's not. We know it's not, but you make it look effortless as an actor. I just want you to know that.
Well, thank you, Matt.
Now, going back, what initially made you audition for a show at NLT?
Well, I had a couple of good friends that were in NLT, Darius Rose and Joyce Kilpatrick Jordan, who you've had on this podcast before, and they were doing Radio Hour. So I decided to come watch them do their trade, and I said, well, that looks interesting. And then, I don't know, a couple of years later, they came out with Little Shop, and I loved the movie, Little Shop of Horrors. I said, I think I'll try it. And I was lucky enough to get a part, and being in the show and watching all of the people working in the show, the bug bit.
Had you had any other theater experience before that?
Not really. A little bit in elementary school. That was about all.
Okay. Now, who played the voice of Audrey 2? You had told me at one point that you.
There's a radio guy.
Yeah.
That was on a radio broadcaster from Raleigh that just had a really sweet, deep voice. Do you know who? I don't remember his name.
So, when you did that, was that like a base for what was to come?
Oh yes. I mean, I helped unpack the puppet. You know, when it came in the big wooden crate, and watched Bill Jordan. He was the puppeteer. Sat inside of it and manipulated it, and just like I say, I was trying to absorb as much as I could. And next thing you know, I auditioned for a show that Tony's directing, by my second show. And he called me and asked me if I'd do the role of Atticus Finch.
Okay.
My second show. And I'm going, Tony, are you sure?
That was your second show?
The second show.
Okay. So that being your second show and knowing a little bit about how Tony works, he must have really seen something in you and that role, because that's your signature role right there. I mean, I said it on the last podcast when we briefly mentioned we didn't briefly mention it, but I wanted to save some of the in-depth stuff for you. That To Kill a Mockingbird, if you were put up a Mount Rushmore of NLT shows, To Kill a Mockingbird would be up there somewhere. And that is, a huge part of that is due to Tony's direction, and also you as Atticus Finch, and also Mary Lee as Scout. So let's talk about it. Tell me about Atticus Finch.
Atticus the person. What was interesting was that I did it twice with Tony. And the first time, he had a certain requirement for Atticus, that he wanted him to be, you know, this paragon of virtual, you know, virtuousness.
Yeah, virtuosity.
Virtuosity.
Yeah,
Thank you,
yeah.
Matt. Thank you. I was a
problem.
science teacher, not English.
No, it's all good.
And the second time we did it, he said, we're going to kick the pedestal out from under Atticus and make him a human being. So he kind of changed. So that's the fascinating part of working with Tony, is that he lets you do the part, but he's got some reins on you as how he wants you to do the part too.
Right. Now, when you said you had to kick Atticus down and make him a human being, what did that entail? Dig deeper. Tell me more about that.
Well, wow. We're talking about 2004. Well, the one scene I can remember very well is the courtroom scene with Mayella. And Mita played Mayella in the second one. And the whole way that he wanted me to question Mayella and get her emotional on the stand was two different ways. The first one was very heavy-handed, very, you know you've done this, and the second time it was a little bit more coming at it from the side. And not quite as confrontational. Softer, with a little more feeling for her and what she'd been going through.
Right.
Yeah, so he humanized him a little more.
That was the more interesting way to play it is, wouldn't you agree?
Very much so.
Right.
Very much so.
Now, I remember, tell me about, you mentioned the courtroom stuff. Tell me about that. I wanted to save this for you because Tell me about the when you actually did it inside the actual courtroom in the downtown.
Oh, yes. The set is always a major player when it comes to acting. And when you have a set that is an actual courtroom with jurors in the jury box and the defendants and the prosecutor at the table and everything, it gives a lot more reality to it and it feels more real. And I think you kind of go into another place with it. And being in the courtroom just enhanced all of the emotion and all of the thoughts that I had about how to have Atticus, because when we're doing it in the hut, we have an audience, but when we did it at the courthouse, I had a jury that I could go to and talk with and make points to and stuff like that. It gave it more of an edge of reality.
Yeah. And you said you did the courtroom scene with Mayella?
It was the whole courtroom scene.
Okay, so you were there too, right, Mita?
Yep.
Tell me your thoughts on that while we're talking about it.
It was different because we had to play it different. It was the audience was behind us, so all of the stuff that we would do, because you do 3/4 out to the audience when you're on stage, didn't apply because all of us that weren't on the witness stand or in the judge's stand, all of us that were were witnesses that would be called up, we had our back to 90% of who was there to watch. The only people who saw us were like the 12 that were in the jury box. And so it was a different feel to it because you weren't playing to an audience really. The layout was different, so it made it very much different from being on stage.
Was that like a promotion for something? How did that come about?
That was it was the book of the month or something for the schools.
It was called The Big Read.
Yeah.
And everybody in Johnston County, from the government officials and all the school kids and all the teachers and everybody was supposed to read a book, and they chose To Kill a Mockingbird.
Right. And we were asked to do the courtroom scene at the courthouse in conjunction with that project.
Interesting. All right. So, moving on from that, had you, what was your next play on that you actually remember doing after To Kill a Mockingbird?
The very next show after it was Damn Yankees.
All right. Tell me about I really don't know what Damn Yankees is about. Tell me about Damn Yankees.
Damn Yankees is an old play I remember watching as a kid on TV, the movie. But there's an old man that's a baseball fan, and he loves the Washington Senators and hates the New York Yankees. And he makes a deal with the devil, who was actually played by Darius Rose. And
shocking.
So typecasting, yes.
I know, right?
And so the deal was that he would make the old man young, and he would play with the Washington Senators, and that they would beat the Yankees. And the show was built around him joining the team. All the music in the show was just wonderful. It was actually Fred Toole, Mita's father's first show.
Yeah, I was going to get to that. Tell me about that, Mita, because I know that comes up a lot.
Well, it was Dad and I's first show. That's about. I mean, I don't know how much you want me to tell. No, I mean, we walked through the door and they were super excited to see us because we were new. Nobody'd seen us before. And Dad opened his mouth and sang, and I was like, well, he's got a decent sized part, I can already tell. So, and we've been here ever since.
Who directed that one? You remember?
It was Debbie Dunn.
Debbie Dunn,
Well,
that's right,
Elam
from
at the
Four
time,
Oaks.
but-
That's right,
Yeah.
that's right. She was big in the theater for a while there in the, I guess, 80s and early 90s.
Probably 90s,
Yeah,
because she did
90s.
Once Upon a Mattress, and she did Harold and Maude.
Yeah, I remember that. Yeah, it was Sean.
Yeah, I remember us talking about that with Sean, and she moved over to, she's over there at Forest Moon now. Isn't that where she's at? Or somewhere in Wake Forest.
Yeah, she it's the Renaissance Center, and
Yeah.
it's where Forest
okay.
Moon does their shows.
Gotcha. That's where Forest Moon performs, right?
So anyway, being the damn Yankees, the devil broke the deal, and the guy turns old as he's chasing a fly ball, and but it all works out in the end.
Now, tell me about your friendship with Darius Rose. You know, I know. It might seem we talk about Darius a lot. That's because he's touched so many members' lives here at the theater. So I always want to know, like, and also interesting stories usually follow Darius. So I want to know from you, Sammy, how do you know Darius Rose?
Well, we taught school at Smithfield-Selma High School together. That's actually where we met. And then, like I say, we did some shows together, Damn Yankees being the first one we did together. And then we did one called Born Yesterday, where he played my lawyer. I was a pretty shady businessman, and we really got close during that run.
Who was the female lead in that? Because I actually know what Born Yesterday.
Heidi Berge.
Okay. Now that was actually no. So Darius played the part of the guy that was in a relationship with the.
No,
the
he
woman.
played the lawyer. Chris Johnson played the guy that got into.
The villain, basically, yeah.
Well, the villain was me.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay. Sorry.
Yeah.
I got turned around there. I do remember Born Yesterday because I watched that movie as a kid for some reason. And it's really not a great movie for a kid to watch.
Yeah, Broderick Crawford played the role I had in that.
Okay. So by this time, you felt pretty comfortable in your shoes, right? You kind of like firmly established and stuff like that.
It got easier. It got easier.
When you're going into a role like Atticus, what do you do? When you get the script, what's the first thing you do? Because you've had several lead roles here at NLT. How do you prepare for those lead roles, or any role really?
Well, first thing I do is I read it very thoroughly, not only for content, but what emotions the characters are feeling in the show. And then I just think about how I would react under the same circumstances, and then I might tweak it a little bit to make it a little more interesting than how I would actually react. But it's pretty much me trying to be a real person instead of an actor.
Right. You bring your own type of humanity to it.
Yeah, it's one of Tony's things he told us. He said, quit acting. Just do the part.
Yeah, just do it. Yeah. Quit acting. He's told me that a lot over the time.
I think we've all heard that before.
Because he would say stuff. He would say like, "I cast you for a reason. Quit it."
Yeah.
You're not. Bruce Willis out there. Stop it. You're you.
Yeah. I've had some roles that it's hard to get the actual original actor. Like when I did A Few Good Men, it's hard to do Jessup without thinking about Nicholson.
Yeah, it is hard.
So you try to take a little pinch of Nicholson, but then you try to make it your own too.
Yeah, and if you don't, it's kind of a cop out.
Absolutely.
If you mimic the person you've seen in the movie, well, with really big stuff like Nicholson and A Few Good Men, or like something huge like a Wizard of Oz or something like that is so memorable, there's a certain degree that it's going to remind you of the movie. But if you just do a carbon copy, that's there's no good. It's, first of all, we've seen that, and second of all, it's no fun for the actor. You're not stretching yourself. You're not stretching those muscles.
The one role that I did kind of do like it was in the movies was Wizard of Oz, but that's understandable. It's the Cowardly Lion.
Right.
The Cowardly Lion is the Cowardly Lion.
They expect a certain amount of when they go in. Yeah.
Exactly.
They're not going to accept a radically different version of the Cowardly Lion.
And that was probably the most frightening show I ever did, because I knew every kid in the auditorium knew every word to every song, and if we messed it up, they would know it. So.
And that must have been huge for you though, because that's a huge role. And you had the whole song about King of the Forest?
Oh yeah, King of the Forest. And, the first one that we did, it's kind of it's the same tune that the others had. If I only had a brain, if I only had a heart, if I only had courage. It was a lot of fun.
I think you were cast against type in that role because I don't think you're a person that has ever lacked for courage. Because I remember because I mentioned it. You've always given me very good advice, and there was a story I told in episode 3 with Reggie, and I actually told you about. I told a story about you in episode 3.
Mm-hmm.
If you'll notice in the actual final product, it is cut out. We cut that out for time purposes, and because I knew I was going to have Sammy on pretty soon, and I was like, okay, I'll save it for when he's actually there. So I'll go ahead and tell you. Because you really helped me start to take it more seriously as an actor, and start kind of, messing around. And because that was during my third role here as in Lend Me a Tenor. And you were doing concessions, or you were doing the table there one night or something. And you were watching the show, and near the end of the show, I'm in my Othello costume, and I got the big wig on, and then I jerked my head a little bit too fast or something, and the wig flew off. And it was funny. It was funny, and everybody laughed. Everybody knew what was happening, and
you were saved by a blackout that came right after that happened.
Right.
I mean, like, boom, right after it happened.
I remember whispering in Abby's ear because we were kind of like play necking on stage at that point in the show, and I remember whispering, "Oh shit!" And so at that point, but I remember going up to you afterwards, and you said like, "Hey Matt," and I was like, "Hey Sammy." And I was like, "Well, that was pretty funny when my wig flew off, right?" And you're like, "Yeah, but you broke character." And I was like, "What?" And I was just like, "Yeah, you broke character. You never broke character." And you were very nice about it, but at the same time, I could tell you were serious about it. And I always remember that. From that point on, I was like, "Well, you know what? I'm never breaking character again. I don't care if a train hits the building. I'm never breaking character again." And I don't think I have since.
I haven't seen you do it. I haven't seen you do it.
Yeah. But no, I respect you telling me that because it was the truth. And while it was funny and cute and all that, that helped me be a better actor more than anything else.
Yeah, one of the things that I really dislike about going to amateur productions like we do and everything is seeing people when they're not giving dialogue breaking character. I mean, they sit around and act like they're not involved and everything. That's a pet peeve that I've got.
Half of acting's listening.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's you
Absolutely.
listening to what's happening on stage. You have to know the story better than anybody else.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's a pet peeve of mine too. Because when you see people drift, you can tell. You can just tell in a snapshot of the scene. So yeah, if you're in the background for a lot, and I've been in the background for a lot, pretty sure you've been in the background for a lot, you need to pay attention and be focused as an actor. Because if you lose focus and do something out of character, you might break the spell of the show. And you've been a part of several of the upgrade projects here at Neuse Little Theater. I was hoping you'd tell me a little bit about it. Tell me about putting in the seats in 2003. You said it was?
Yes. We had seats, but they were really stained and just uncomfortable. Some of them were broken. So we talked to the community college, and they actually had some lecture hall seats that they had in storage at a building in Clayton, and told us to go pick some out. We paid, I don't know, maybe $5 a seat, and we came in here and took the old seats out, tore out the old risers, got it down to the flat floor. Then we built the new risers, painted them, and then put the new seats in over Christmas holiday when I was on break from school.
And you've also helped Fred with the heating and air conditioning upgrades over the years, which has been vital, I would say.
Yeah, I've helped him. Bill Jordan is instrumental when it comes to this kind of work, too. He put a lot of sweat into putting these seats in, too. But he's a little bit more handy than I am.
Yeah, well, Bill Jordan will be on this podcast soon. Don't you worry. But it just goes to show there's more than just showing up and trying to be in a play, to keep this theater running.
Absolutely.
We need good, dedicated people, and that's going to come in here and maybe work for free.
Yeah, that's our going price.
But you can do it because you love it.
That's it.
I mean, if you didn't do it, then why?
Yeah,
why are you here?
and it's such a great group of people in this theater. I mean, it's just like joining a family.
Yeah. So moving on to your career here as an actor, You were in a very intense play called Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf? A classic, but whoo boy.
Oh boy, yeah. Yeah, no cast parties after that one.
Because you're too tired, right?
And too depressed.
I know, it's such a depressing play. It's brilliant, but at the same time, it's a chore to get through,
It
right?
is,
I can't imagine what it's like for an actor.
And it was 270 pages of script.
With 4 characters.
4 characters.
And a lot of that is them being terrible to each other. Tell me about your experience on that.
Oh,
You got Stephanie Viren.
doing Martha.
And then, help me out, Meet.
Rick Flores played Nick.
Mm-hmm.
I did George. And a girl that's only done one show for us, I haven't seen her since then, came in and did the honey part. I don't know her name either, but she was really good.
What was you and Tony directed that, right?
Yes, he did.
When you have a disagreement, tell me. We haven't talked about that at all, but I know we'd like to think that rehearsals are peaches and cream and all that, but guess what? You run into problems, and sometimes you have disagreements. Tell me how, in your experience, how's the best way to resolve them?
Just work through them. Just try to understand where the person's coming from, and try to link up with it. And that's the only thing I know to do.
What about you, Mita? When you run into stuff like that, how do you feel about dealing with stuff like where disagreements, creative differences, whatever you want to call them?
I'm trying to think what kind of stories I could tell you. I get along with everyone all the time.
Come on.
I have no idea what you're talking about.
You told me about Man Who Came to Dinner before and how you get to play a part called Banjo.
Banjo.
Tell me about doing that part with Darius and all that, because that was the play I unfortunately missed. I was like one show before my time.
Yeah, Banjo was an interesting character because I didn't come on until about the last third of the play. I got to sit in the back and watch everything else go on or listen to it. But when he came on, it was wide open. I mean, he was supposedly a comedian in the realm of a Jimmy Durante or something like that in the movies. And of course, he was a friend of Applewhite.
Whiteside.
Whiteside. Applegate is the devil.
Yeah.
Right. Same character, but anyway, same word, Darius. But he came on and he did nothing but cause trouble. Mm-hmm. I got the chance to lock Teresa up in a sarcophagus.
Yeah, she told you heard that about that on the first episode. Tell us about that from your perspective. We know her perspective.
Yeah, well, Teresa was doing her her scene where she'd get in it, and Darius would be trying to talk me into closing it up, and then I'd start to get up and she'd come out and I'd sit down, and then she'd go back in and I'd get up, she'd come out and I'd sit down. As you're playing, how that comic skit goes, and then finally got her in there long enough that I could shut her up and lock her.
But she was afraid that you guys were going to drop her every night.
That wasn't me. That was
Stephen and. Was it Craig?
I think it was Craig, yeah.
And Stephen will deny it. He says they did not drop her.
I don't know if she hit the floor or not, but I think she got the sensation of weightlessness.
She felt a wind. I was like, that doesn't feel right.
Yeah, but that was a fun show, and especially because I got a chance to play with my wife in that one.
Right.
She was the nurse, and my first coming on stage, I saw her and started chasing her around the couch.
Yeah, I've seen that clip.
And so, it was a lot of fun to play off of her.
You and Rhonda have been married for how long, sir?
47 years.
Wow.
Yeah.
She's an actress here as well, and also helps out with the box office, and I'm sure does many other things that I don't know off the top of my head here.
She's done costumes. She's done props.
Yeah, I acted with Rhonda in Lemmy a Tenor, and she was very nice to work with, a very kind woman. We'll have to get her on here too. We'll have to do like a little couples thing, So, and then shifting, you work with Stephanie Viren again, and You Can't Take It With You. And this time she was directing the show, and then you were in the lead role in You Can't Take It With You. That's a classic show by George S. Kaufman and Marty Hart. I really want to say Hart. Is that right?
It's Kaufman and Hart. I don't know what their first names are. And Man Who Came to Dinner is the same.
Gotcha.
So it's got a similar feel.
Good ensemble cast. Wonderful ensemble cast. We played a little trick on Sean. It wasn't actually in a show. It was in rehearsal. We take shows way too seriously. But Sean was playing the boyfriend of my granddaughter in that show. And so he came in to pick her up, and the family was in the room, and the scene called for us to sit in the couches and then him to sit in the chair and all that. So we said one night in rehearsal, let's just kind of just look at him and smile real big, and not say anything. And it got him. I mean, he sat down, he looked at us, and you could see it looked like, he was scared to death, like, what's going on? So we all had a good laugh at that, but, give him an idea of what might happen to him on stage because he's dating our girl.
Yeah. You wanted to keep that space open for possible mischief,
Absolutely.
There's always space for mischief here at NLC.
Always.
So, and shifting into this show, Battle for Shaliford, directed by our very own Toole. She's going to also talk a little bit about it. But this show is talked about a lot, not because of anything bad, but because the set looks so good. It was one of those shows where the set wasn't a character in the show.
Absolutely.
Tell us about that show. Set it up a little bit, and feel free to jump in, Mita, whenever.
Okay, my character was the owner of a general store and post in the country. This was in the late 1930s, and it was post office, store, clothing store, general store type of thing. And the story goes that the crowd, Reggie and Darius and Craig Baker, and we all hear on the radio Orson Welles' War of the Worlds. So naturally, we think that we're being invaded. So the show is about us getting ready to go out and fight the aliens and
bunch of country bumpkins out there with their pitchforks about to fight the Martians.
Yeah, and Doodad shot a cow. Doodad was Craig Baker, and I don't even think he had a line in the show, but he got more laughs than anybody.
I think he had maybe 4 words or something. It was
like that.
Very few lines at all, and it was all physical. And I had to keep pulling him back in because he was upstaging you guys constantly. And I was just like, Craig, you can't do that. He goes, but it's funny. I'm like, I know, but I'm watching you. I need to hear them talk.
Yeah. Another neat thing about that is, like you say, the set was just magnificent. I mean, you would think you were in a country store. But behind the counter where the mailboxes were and everything was the candy shelf with all these glass jars with different kinds of orange slices and different kinds of the candies. And I couldn't help keep going behind being the owner of the store, I just kept going behind the counter and getting me a piece of candy.
Why are we showing massive losses on orange slices?
Yeah. Yeah.
They ate candy, they ate peanuts, and part of the show was the curtain would come up, and Brenna Martin, who played the young girl, which would be Sammy's daughter at the time, had to be sweeping the stage. And so the crew from the light booth, so the tech booth, would come down, and the cast that after it was all over with, they'd come down here and eat peanuts and throw the shells on the floor, so she had something to sweep up. Rats were very excited about living here at that point. We gave them so much, they were little fat mice everywhere.
Yeah. And a neat thing about it is that on one of our nights that we had the show, we had the author that wrote the play come in and sit in the audience. And so we brought him up on stage after the show so the patrons that came to see the show could meet him and everything.
What do you think?
He was very nice. He and I did not interpret the script the same way, but, it was nice. It was good that he came the last night, not the first night, so I was not, second guessing my directing style the whole time. But he was super nice. He lives in Winston-Salem or someplace like that. He lives in North Carolina, and he came to he had emailed me before and sent me a lot of stuff, and he would have come the first weekend, except his daughter had a baby or something, and so he had to come the second weekend so he could go and be with his grandchild when it was born. But he was very appreciative. He was excited to see somebody do his work. I think it's a great show. I highly recommend it.
Yeah, the main thing I remember is him telling Darius that's not the way he wrote that line.
Oh, man. I don't remember that line being that way. What?
Again, the reason why I'm glad he came closing night and not opening night.
Yeah.
Because at that point it's done. It doesn't matter.
Yeah. Darius took a line that insinuated something and turned it into in your face something.
Oh, Darius made it less subtle.
Yeah. And it was funny.
Again, shocking.
But that's the thing I love about this theater is we do shows that people have never heard of, and they come out saying, I had no idea.
Absolutely. We've talked about this and about how we take chances on shows that people had just never heard of. Because the classics are nice, but there's more than just the classics. There are. And we'll do classics, but at the same time, Neuse Little Theater isn't afraid to like stepping outside the box and doing something weird or off the wall, you know? Mm-hmm. And that's something I truly like, because it's really not like that at a lot of other theaters. It's just not.
There's a lot of really good stories out there that get overlooked just because they don't have the name recognition or nobody knows who the author is. And it's a shame because I really like doing the more obscure stuff.
Yeah, and I've talked to actors that come from other theaters that say they're attracted to us because we do such a variety of shows. They're tired of the fluff. They're tired of the
next musical or the same Christmas show or I understand what you're saying. And we mentioned that too, and talk about how I'm telling you, especially in recent years, we've had an influx of a lot of really good acting talent.
Almost every show we do has at least one or two
right.
people that we've never seen on stage here.
Yes, and that's a big deal because there's a lot of these little theaters out there that where the casting pool is just not as wide, and the same people end up in the shows. And there was several years there where if you looked at the Cannon Awards, our annual award ceremony, if you looked at the Best Actor or Best Actress nominees, all but one of them were new people, brand new people. So I am really proud of that, and I know you're proud of that.
Oh, absolutely. I've seen the day where I would get cast in a role because I was the only one here to be cast in a role.
Been there.
Yeah, but now, you come in for auditions and, you got half a house.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And that's a testament to our show selection, but it's also a testament to the people that work here, too. Because people hear about it. They hear that it's a really nice place to work and that it's open and please come. Don't be afraid. Yeah,
we're nowhere near an ensemble. A group. We're open, and it's a wonderful thing because you get to not only see new actors, but you make new friends.
Right, new experiences. Yeah, and I do that. I branch out. I want to. There's sometimes like, I want to go and do a show somewhere where I have like no connections, just to see how it is as a new person going in. And I did that recently with the Gilbert Theater down there at Fayetteville, and they're a great little group that I highly recommend people come out and try. They remind me a lot of us, only without the charming little log cabin. Uh-huh. They remind me a lot of us. They really do. Now talk about we've mentioned this on the podcast before too, about Something's Afoot. We were in Something's Afoot together.
Yes.
We both died in Something's Afoot.
I think everybody died.
Yeah. Everybody. It's 10 Little Indians basically as a musical, and we mentioned the night we almost killed Darius.
Yeah.
And stuff. But your song is one of the more funnier songs. You had right.
I was a prop for Teresa in her mustache song, Ginger Mustache.
That's right, Ginger Mustache. But But no, your death was funny because you had like a timed death, like
Oh, yeah.
only 30 seconds left, you know. And your dry humor really made that scene. You sold that scene. That could have been lame, but your dry humor kind of sold that scene.
Well, I appreciate that. I loved that show.
Yeah, tell me about working
Oh,
on
my
that with
gosh.
Ruth. It was such a great cast, very talented cast.
That was what I was getting ready to say. I mean, that cast from top to bottom was top notch.
You had a bunch of heavy hitters in there. You had, I'm sorry if I forget somebody, forgive me. We had Teresa, Darius, Sammy,
Sean,
Leanne,
Leanne Bernard.
Sean, and because I remember the show-stopping number of the teeny little dingy song.
Yeah.
That was always going to be. That was always the pinnacle of the show. We were always just waiting for that. I know I'm forgetting somebody. Oh, Patsy was also in it as the detective.
Patsy Costello.
And she
yeah.
also served as our choreographer.
Castellana, she did a great job.
And Nicole, I'm forgetting her last name, and then Gene Marlowe's grandson, Adam Marlowe, was also in it too. Just a really top to bottom talented cast. You know?
Wonderful script, great music. I mean, you know, what else can you ask for?
I died first in that. I played the butler, and I remember like I would literally die on stage, change out of my costume, go get something to eat, come back, change back into my costume for curtain call.
Yeah, and I think, you know, I actually won a Canon for that role, and I think it was my costume more than it was my acting.
You had a great costume. Yeah, I'm looking at your Canons list here. You're at 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And people like Darius and Reggie have like 9 and 10, and I'm now realizing I don't think that'll ever be broken because it's a whole lot harder to win Canons nowadays. It's not important. It really is. And if you get into community theater or acting in general for the awards, then you are getting into it for the wrong reasons.
If you're looking to get rewarded like that, yeah.
If you're looking for something to hang up on the wall, no. All my treasured memories are more and mementos from the show or photos from the show, and the awards are nice. They're nice, but not necessary.
Well, recognition is nice.
Yeah, and it's also, a way of keeping score almost. It's a way of just like seeing what was on that year. You know, I'm a competitive person, so naturally that part comes out in me. You know. And I know both you watch sports too, so I know you have a little bit.
Yeah, and played sports and.
Yeah.
But it's nice to be recognized, but we get recognized after every performance with the porch.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We have a little. We haven't really talked about that. Tell us about
A
our
little
tradition.
tradition we have is after the curtain closes, the actors go out to the front porch and greet the audience. And the audience will come through and shake our hands and tell us hey, we were good or we were bad or whatever they thought. And that's reinforcing.
Yes, and now as I'm sitting here talking about this, I'm unfortunately realizing that might have to be altered somewhat in the future.
Yeah, who knows with the COVID what's going to happen.
How have you been hanging through all that, sir? How's that been going with you? Because I know you miss it too. I know you do.
Oh Lord, I even like working the box office, you know, because I get to meet people, you know, that's in the audience that I know, and they always say, "Aren't you in this show?" And I said, "You see me here, right?" and I'm not in this show. Maybe the next one. You know, but I'm kind of semi-retired.
You told me you were thinking about hanging it up. What's that all about?
Physical. Yeah, I'm on some medication that will cause me to have torso cramps, and I am so afraid that we'll have to stop a show because I fall to the floor. When we did Something's Afoot, I had some issues with it. When we were backstage, when I wasn't on stage, I would have a heating pad on my ribs because it had gotten cold and it was cool, and if I shivered, I would cramp. So, matter of fact, we were just finishing up Act 1, and it was right before Teresa was supposed to get electrocuted, and I had caught a cramp when we were doing the ginger mustache, but luckily it wasn't a really bad one, but it was enough to make me kind of ache a little bit. But I was never been so glad to see her get electrocuted.
You were ready for that to be over.
I was ready for that to be over so I could get backstage to my heating pad.
I had stomach surgery recently, and it happened when I was directing a show. I was directing Blood Spirit down in Goldsboro, and I was also slated to appear as Dr. Bradman.
I did that role.
You did that, yeah. I just now realized you did the Dr. Bradman with Leanne, who I pretty much asked when I figured out I was going to direct it. It wasn't really an auditions for the shows, an assembled cast, and I was like, Leanne, come down and do that role again. Come down and do basically what you did down here in Goldsboro. And in the middle of the surgery, in the middle of the rehearsal, I had to have surgery, emergency surgery. And I have a little bit of glimpse of that because after the surgery, I could barely do rehearsals, let alone play a part on stage, because I didn't want to stop a show. Because of something happening, because I physically couldn't do it. You know, and I that has always been. I'm much better now. And I'm able to pretty much be like normal, even though I am somewhat 70 pounds lighter, but still that's a work in progress too, you know. But I do understand that somewhat, and that's a very frightening thing. Yeah, how's your mother doing?
Mom, she's doing so good. She's doing so good.
I miss Miss Betty.
Yeah, she's important to us too. As a matter of fact, NLT was a wonderful thing for her because one of the first shows I did after Dad's death was Smokey Joe's Cafe out at the college. And I invited her to come backstage and watch how we were putting the production together and watch rehearsals and stuff. And she kind of got really interested in it. So now she does the box office. She's in charge of the concession stand. She does reservations. She's just totally involved in the theater.
Well,
it's been a really good therapy for her.
Yeah, that keeps coming up, just the theater as therapy part. And I know that that's how it is for me. I'm pretty sure that's how it is for you, and Mita too as well. I mean, is it therapy for you a lot?
Oh yeah. There's something very therapeutic about coming and just being somebody else for a couple hours every night, and people don't realize I feel lighter when I leave. Mm-hmm. It's really odd because you can come in here with the world on your shoulders, and then you get to set all of you aside and just be somebody else and be focused on something with an end point, so you don't feel like it just continues on. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, most definitely.
Wearing somebody else's skin for a couple of hours a week is very helpful to some people. And it's helpful for me.
Even if it's a not so good character.
Sometimes it's better when it's a not so good character.
I know, aren't they fun to play?
I love playing the villains. I love playing the villains so much. I haven't had my signature villain yet, but it'll come one day.
We did a little Darius story here. We did Cabaret, and I played the Jewish fruit salesman, and everything. And at the end of the show, the Nazis came out and took me off. They came and actually arrested me and was taking me off. And Darius, being the MC, is kind of sitting up on a perch over here on stage left. And I look at him like I'm pleading for help. And he just looks at me and he just goes and gives me the finger.
Of course he did.
Yeah.
Help me, Darius! Help me! Help me!
But
sorry, pal.
Yeah, and that's the only night he did it, but it fit so well, But it's definitely in character for Darius.
I think we're going to stick a pin in it there. Thank you, Sammy, for coming down and sharing your memories and about Neuse Little Theater with us. It's very important. It's very important.
Appreciate the invitation.
I said it to. I remember having this conversation. This was also the same conversation backstage. This is our very first show in Foxfire. Back there in that room back there, we called the green room. Mm-hmm. It's now the wig room.
Yeah.
Green room / wig room. And you were about to go on, and you looked over and said, always check your fly before going out on stage. And I do every single time because of you. And every time I do that, I think about you. And I remember telling you had so much. Did that sound not right, Mita? That sound not right?
Out of context, that was a little a little rough.
Thank you for taking my sweet moment and totally shitting on it.
I think of you every time I check my fly.
Check you, okay.
Well, you learn from experience, and you got to share what you've learned. So.
Yeah, but in all seriousness, jokes aside, Sammy, I saw how hard you worked during that show, and I saw how hard you worked backstage on stuff that wasn't connected to the show, and it inspired me to do more here and focus on the community in theater and less on the theater in theater, and it'll bring you to a good place, and I want to thank you for that, sir.
Well, I appreciate that, Matt, and I want to thank you because you sure have brought a lot to the theater.
I try. It's important to me. This place truly is important to me, and this podcast is just a little piece that I want to leave behind for the viewers and the audience and everybody and the future generations for Neuse Little Theater.
Well, it's been going for how long?
46.
46 years.
Almost 50 years. Here's the 50 more.
That's right. That's right. But people like you, the younger people, going to have to keep it going.
Well, we'll do our best. We'll do our best. Preserving the integrity and the brand and just what this place is about is important to me. I would never want to change it.
Well, it's been hard earned. It's
Absolutely.
been hard earned, but it's been worth it.
All right. For Neuse Little Podcast, I'm your host and creator, Matt Gore. Our producer is Toole. Our sound editor is Toole. Music is by Cody Walker. Please like and check out his work on Cody Walker Music on Facebook. He's a local boy. Please check out his music. He's very talented. And also, I would like to thank personally my fiance for allowing me to use her car tonight because my truck crapped out at the last minute. So I know she's cranky and at home alone with the cat. So, baby, I just want to say thank you for that, and I love you. All right, for this little podcast, we'll see you later.